Okay, good morning, children. So, in the last class, we studied about a period of transition, sources, materials, primary sources, secondary sources, and even the modern period in Europe, industrial revolution, causes for the industrial revolution, and now we are going to study about the spread of industrial revolution. The Industrial Revolution that began in England was not a single event, but a continuing process which went through different phases and spread to different countries at different times. Mechanized industries were introduced in France, Germany, USA, and Japan. Germany made rapid progress after its unification in 1871 and became one of the leading industrial nations in Europe. England gradually lost its lead by the end of the 19th century. The USA also emerged or made substantial progress in the field in the iron and steel industry. It soon became one of the leading industrial nations of the world. Industrialization in Russia was very slow but picked up after the Russian Revolution, mean after 1917. Japan was the first Asian country to become industrialized. What was the impact of the Industrial Revolution? Here, economic impact, political impact, and social impact. Under economic impact, first point, urbanization. The Industrial Revolution leads to the growth of cities and towns. There are so many factories were set up in the urban areas. People from the village began to migrate to these industrial towns and cities in search of jobs. The shifting of population from rural to urban area was an important development of the Industrial Revolution. Mean the migration was took place from rural to urban areas in search of jobs. Second economic impact, factory system. The Industrial Revolution led to the destruction of domestic system of production. In the earlier, the factories or industries were run with the help of family members in their own villages. But now, workers went to work in factories and machine-made goods were manufactured on a large scale. The work was divided between people according to their ability and capability and skill and specialization. Third factor, division of labor. One of the important characteristic features of the Industrial Revolution was the division of labor. Each person or a group of people performed a specialized task in which they have a specialization in that particular way they are began to work. Then capitalism and economic disparity. The Industrial Revolution led to the concentration of wealth in the hands of the capitalist. A few rich people who owned the means of production, whereas the vast majority of workers were employed by the capitalists in their factories and worked under them for wages. The workers were exploited by the capitalists and lived in poverty and misery. There was a lot of gap between the haves and have-nots or capitalists and workers. The capitalists thus they formed a group called haves or rich, whereas the workers, those who were working for low salaries under capitalists, they were came to be known as poor or have-nots. So when this economic inequality led to the social inequalities, which eventually led to the growth of socialism. Next, expansion of trade and commerce. Large scale production of goods led to the expansion of trade and commerce. Surplus goods were sold out, sold to other countries. increasing profits made the industrialized nations rich and prosperous. Trade also expanded because steamships were being used, which were superior to the earlier ships. They can use these steamships, they can send the goods to the other part of the countries and continents. As production increased, further these nations began to look for new markets for the sale of finished products. This is in turn to led to the competition among the European nations to acquire other countries of the world. Because of this reason, many European countries they were conquered or acquired many Asian, African and Latin American countries and they were began to rule them and they were began to send their finished products there and they were trying to find out the market for their goods. Next, socialism. Socialism was a reaction to the evils of capitalism. We know that capitalist class people they were emerged as haves. They were began to exploit the have-nots or poor people. As a result of this reason, socialism was a reaction to the evils of capitalism. So, under the socialism, under which there is no private ownership of capital, people in socialist setup would not be divided into rich or poor classes. The means of production or capital is owned by society. The means of capital is owned by whom? By the society as a whole. And everybody would work and share equally and profits the fruits of their labor. Thus, exploitation would be whipped out and a classless society based on economic and social equality would be established. Second, in fact, social effects. The first, social inequality. Economic disparity between the rich capitalists and the poor workers led to the gross social inequalities. There was a wide gap between the social status of the capitalist and the workers. Second one, harsh living condition of the workers. The Industrial Revolution led to the migration of people from rural area to urban areas in search of jobs. Cities grew rapidly and without any proper planning. As the population grew or increased in the cities and cities become overcrowded and people were forced to live in crowded homes in or in a slums without proper sanitation or water or any others. In urban areas or in cities and towns, a large number of slums sprang up. Black smoke filled the air, and in the absence of basic amenities like health and other facilities, and diseases and epidemics took a heavy toll of human lives. According to a report of a slum in Manchester, all the inhabitants had died due to a cholera epidemic in the early 1830s. Next, exploitation of workers. The capitalists they have a rich resource in their hand and they have a heavy wealth in their hand, but they are a very less in number, whereas the workers are more. But these capitalist people they were began to so exploit the majority of workers. Workers had no job security and they could be dismissed at any time. They worked on very low wages and under extremely harsh conditions. The capitalists forced or demanded the workers to do work 16 hours a day without a break. They were not allowed to go on strike. Women and children were employed in large numbers in deep and dangerous social mines, coal mines. They worked from dawn to dusk on extremely low wages. No compensation was paid to workers for injury or death due to accident in mines and factories. The work was extremely stressful and living condition was also very harsh. Next, political effects. Rise of the capitalist. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, landowners enjoyed great wealth, privileges, and political influence. The Industrial Revolution led to the emergence of the wealthy and powerful capitalist class as a dominant force in the British Parliament. Government policies were influenced by the interest of the capitalist class. Next, trade unions. When the capitalist class people began to exploit the workers. The workers they want to protect themselves from the exploitation of the capitalist class people. They were united and organized themselves into trade unions because to fight for their rights and better working conditions. The trade unions faced very strong resistance from the employers. In many countries, the clash between the trade unions and the capitalists led to bloodshed. The struggle of the trade unions was very long and arduous. The vast majority of workers did not have the right to vote. The determination and efforts of the trade unions eventually bore fruit. The government passed several factory laws to improve the conditions of the workers and grant them certain rights.